Right, a test for you. Did you know there's a certain Japanese bike manufacturer who also makes aircraft? And did you know they also make a bike that'll do a mile in under 20 seconds? Yes, it's true. And what's the connection? It's aerodynamics. And this, the ZX12R, is full of aerodynamics. In fact, the aerodynamics make it so fast that the European Commission threatened dire consequences if it really did 200 miles an hour. Instead, it does around 188 in the right conditions, which doesn't happen to be now. But that's all a bit academic. It's good for pub talk, but in the real world, what you have is more power than a 5 Series BMW and about a seventh of the weight. Get the picture? This is a serious performance motorcycle. Now you can forget the old ZZR1100, that's still in production, but this is a completely different bike. The biggest difference is the frame. Gone are the old perimeter frame rails running around here that you get is common on most bikes these days. This has got a monocoque frame, one big aluminium fabrication down the middle there. Houses the fuel tank. This here is just a plastic cover, it's not a tank at all. The filler's there, but the tank is also down here, hear that? So that's the fuel tank. In the centre of this monocoque frame is the airbox, all part and parcel of it with the filters in there. Top here, it's got a little panel for the fuses, but that's all new and really identifies this bike as being something different. Now up front you can see what I'm calling the giant pooper scooper. That's the ram air duct, which Kawasaki says adds actually 12 brake horsepower when you're going at full chat, which is a hell of a lot. Some people have said, why isn't it flush? Well, if it was flush, according to aircraft technology, you lose a lot of that fresh air intake. You're just lost on the aerodynamics. Now the other part of this equation, that's 12 brake horsepower extra, but the rest of it is here. And this brand new engine produces 180 brake horsepower. That's a lot of ponies, that is, let alone all these sheep around here. It's brand new, it's got chrome plated bores, which means they can get the bores closer together. Saves weight, makes the engine much slimmer. Also under this magnesium cover, 12 plate clutch as well. All very neat, copes with all that power. And look up here, fuel injection. Massive chokes there, that's where they're sucking all that air in to get all that power. Whatever, the technology certainly works. The bike feels much lighter than it is, more like a 600 than a 1200, but open that throttle and you know it's a 1200. It's a matter of dialer speed, 90 in first, 120 in second, and so on. But it's not just brute power. The delivery is super smooth and the handling a revelation. Again, this is nothing like the old ZZR1100, which is like a super tanker in comparison to this. On the ZX12R, you just tip it into the corner and around you go. The suspension is firm but well controlled and the whole bike really feels nimble. A sort of amazing grace. Grace or not, the suspension is fully adjustable, front and rear. And look at this front end. Upside downers on this, 43mm stanchions. 6-pot calipers there, the old 320mm discs. And see this little gizmo here, this little aerodynamic deflector. Now it's not a gimmick, that's actually designed to pick up the airflow there and stop it being disrupted by these calipers. So it doesn't have too much drag. All this counts. And here, if you can see them, these little holes here, the air goes into the radiator and would you believe it's actually sucked out through there and around the side of the fairing. Again, this is aircraft technology, comes along there. And see these little wings. Now these aren't designed to keep you down on the ground. Again, this is to disrupt the airflow. It's to stop any messy air from here and off the front wheel coming up the side of the fairing. So it breaks it up, reduces drag again and increases speed. And it's all supposed to work. Aircraft technology. But what are these aerodynamics like for the rider? They're good. The screen's low, of course, but the rest of it is very effective at keeping the blast off you. The riding position itself is fairly sporty with a slight tip forward and the seat big and roomy, which is just as well because this bike is absolutely ballistic. It's so responsive and so powerful that you've got to feel right to feel in command. But the poor old passenger has got nothing at all to hold on to. You could in fact strap them down on these bungee hooks, but that wouldn't be very nice, would it? Under here is in fact the pillion seat. You just take this plastic cover off and under there is a small seat squab. But as I say, with no grab rail, I wouldn't fancy that at all. Just put that back on there. When you're actually coming up to the cockpit, you can't help but miss these mirrors, which look absolutely massive. Again, some people don't like them. They're all aerodynamic. But I tell you what, this mirror glass at first feels pretty big. But what you see is your shoulders, not your elbows. Normally on sports bike you see elbows, but not shoulders. If you crouch down over the tank, yes, you get a clear view. But again, most of the time you're sitting fairly upright, so it's only half mirror. Down in here, if I just clamber aboard, the instruments, they're both analog, speedo and rev counter. But the speedo's very, very small, and those digits are really crammed up. 220 miles an hour it shows on here, and there's just too many of them. So if you are travelling at a fair old lick, which you're bound to be doing, you actually can't clearly read them. On the right is a great big digital display, which has got a clock on there, and it's got 2 trip mileage recorders as well. So you change the clock into 1 trip, and the other one into the total mileage or the trip. It's also got a fuel gauge at the top and a temperature gauge, very neat, but I prefer a big digital display of the actual speed. After all, it's a Gatto that's going to lose your licence, not the clock. Now at the back here, this very pretty chain isn't just pretty. See these gold side plates? They're specially strengthened. This was a chain made by DID just for this bike. So it's got strengthened side plates and strengthened rollers as well. You can also see this swing arm, which looks a bit odd first off because they call it a pentagonal shape. In there's interior webbing to strengthen the swing arm on both sides, and it's supposed to match the flex and complement it to give the right amount of movement so you haven't got any part too rigid. What also you can't miss is this massive back tyre. This is this big 200 section rear tyre. Forget your 180s, 190s, 200 section. Monoshock tucked away up there. Fully adjustable, of course, and over on the other side I can just see my reflection in there. Not a pretty sight, but I don't have to tell you that. Massive titanium can, and down at the front end of that is a catalytic converter, all work within the pipe. Makes it very, very neat. So where are we in the hyperbike stakes? At £9,380 on the road, the Quacker is more expensive than the Blackbird or the Hayabusa. But all 3 bikes have a similar performance. The Honda a bit more refined, the Suzuki a bit more of a bruiser, but all 3 will see you losing your licence with a twist too far. Where the Ninja really scores though is in the handling stakes. It's lighter than its competitors and its handling is tauter, well and truly in the sports bike class. Couple that to its slimmer feel and to me more stylish lines, and irrespective of the whose is the fastest of them all debate, I'd say the ZX12 has the edge in the hyper performance class. The ultimate rocket ship class. By the way, not only can you have one in lime green like this one, it also comes in red and a classy silver. Not that you'll be in view long enough for anyone to notice, of course, so just enjoy. I'll tell you one thing, this is certainly not a bike for the sheepish.